My name is Harsha Sirigareddy. I'm the owner and founder of Reds and Solutions. We are a software and a staffing firm. We focus on Java-based technologies, all the way from developing custom software solutions on the web, a web-based platform, or a custom, application, or an app-based solution. Thank you.
I'm Nicholas Williams. I'm the Vice President of Software for Devio. We're a blockchain company that's kind of approaching the technology from a new direction.
I'm Kevin Haggart. I own a company called WeConnect Nevada. We do wiring infrastructure for communication systems. And yeah, that's pretty good.
Hi everyone, I'm Kenneth Sealsnut. I'm a lead software engineering manager for a conversational commerce company called Wizard AI. And then I also wear a couple other hats where I'm a computer science researcher for Yale University, and then co-founded a research project called Science Stories that's aimed at amplifying the lives and works of women and people of color in the sciences.
Hi everyone, I'm stepping in for Jeffrey Tyrell Moodley with Yaz Money, and I'll just be moderating today. So the first question is, how can governments, businesses, and nonprofits collaborate effectively to maximize tech's positive impact? Discuss your views on how technologies such as AI, blockchain, quantum computing, IoT, augmented virtual reality could transform industries, economies, and societies. Additionally, focus will be placed on cultural practices like politically driven DEI programs that have disrupted these same environments.
Got it. So I think to start off, we need to address the importance of government in this particular space, because we are in a space that's not regulated, but we are seeing a lot of risks, right? We just went through a presentation about what the impacts are when this is abused. But there's a fine line between how much government intervention versus innovation is needed. I think one example, I know there's a lot of regulations in Europe about personal information, which is a good step in the right direction. I know there are some other items that I believe the European Council has proposed related to common, what's the word I'm looking for? The charging cables and things like that, like where they're like, we need to standardize USB-C, so that there's also a commitment to reduce waste and things like that happening in the world.
I think in terms of, collaboration between government, nonprofits, and private companies is essential to make progress. And one of the best ways to support that is clarity of kind of the mission or the goals. I personally am a big fan of SMART goals. So if you haven't heard of that, that's specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, time-bound goals. Once you have things like that, it makes it just a lot easier to collaborate, because I'm sure everyone here has been in meetings and stuff where it's kind of, people have some shared sense of what they want to do, but it just never coheres into something solid. And so the faster you can get to like solid metrics, especially, the better. I don't know if it's a real Einstein quote, but there's a quote out there that you measure it and it will improve. And I think that's true just because it draws attention to whatever that thing is, and it kind of makes the process more empirical. So that helps. The collaborations I've seen, and I've been on most sides of that. I've worked with governments, I've worked with nonprofits and private corporations. Collaboration works better when there's just a very clear goal.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much good that can come out of all the technology. Obviously, me running a company where we install the cabling and wiring and infrastructure for all these systems. Mm-hmm. There's so many things as far as security-wise, doing the security cameras, but there's also a lot of potential for, I guess, the risks with the AI as we learned. But the good things about it are really amazing. For example, I always go back to, I have some older parents, and the technology stuff is only like helping their lives, as they don't want to adopt it right away, and it takes a little bit for them to get used to it. But things like Google Nest and stuff like that helps my mom immensely. So as she's sitting there, because she's mobily impaired, and so she's able to do different things in her house and things like that. And so there's just so much good that comes from technology, and that's just one area. I mean, we see it in everything that we do, but tech only improves everybody's life, but it also has the potential for bad things. But how do we keep that and mitigate those risks is the biggest thing we're looking for.
Yeah. And building on the collaboration side of it, interoperability is something that's becoming more and more common among software engineers across each of these spectrums. So a lot of the work that I do is building bridges from industry and academia so that when developers are building similar products, it's shared across in terms of open source code that can be installed across multiple computers or multiple software pipelines. And so that to the risk and security vulnerability question, there's more actors that are using the software and are testing it. And if there is a security vulnerability, there's fewer people that would allow you to keep that as a problem going forward, just out of nature of so many people as being deeply involved into the code creation process can go in and address patches instantly versus a closed source network where if there is somebody who infiltrates that, you might have a very segmented set of developers that would actually be able to make those changes. So that's like one of the areas that I try to focus on is finding areas that attribution and software engineering best practices can be applied in industry and then in academia. One of those is through the image interoperability framework, where a bunch of researchers and universities are collaborating with big organizations like Google and Microsoft and the W3C Corporation, a consortium which determines how images are processed on the web. And if every pocket of our sectors are building this out in our own ways, if there is an issue such as a cybersecurity threat or even a lack of transparency of people, spam uploading and downloading images, you have actors that are personally have some skin in the game into these systems that are taking action immediately when these things happen. And it's easier to have a lot of these transferable pieces of technology as part of a larger ecosystem, so you can really focus on what are the nuances that your sector is taking part in. And so out of that, a lot more time development can be spent on the social good and the actual value added for businesses, and less on building foundational infrastructure.
So, continuing from our conversation yesterday, Nick, I see some interesting topics here. And, since you're involved in in crypto, the blockchain space, it speaks about how can governments help to bring a positive societal impact, right? Could you give some examples in the work that you do?
Well, that's a major problem in the work I do right now, actually, is the government hasn't been very clear about what the boundaries are, and it's had a chilling effect in my industry for sure. And yeah, I mean, like I was saying before, it comes back to clarity. I mean, technology at the end of the day is amoral, which I mean, it has no ethics, in itself. It's just a tool. So like Vincent Allen stated it really well yesterday, that people will do great things with new technology, but they'll also do horrendous things because it's all about how you use the tool, and it can be used or misused. So governments really need to state like what the boundaries are, in a sense. That is kind of what regulation is. And so in crypto especially, securities regulation is just way behind the technology. And that for us, especially as a very white hat company that wants to follow the laws of the U.S., it paralyzes us compared to DeFi companies that are just going to run ahead and do whatever they like. And it's a problem, like with a smart contract. I was touching on this yesterday. I don't think I fully made my point. You could have a contract that's like an assassination contract or something. There's nothing technological stopping that from happening. So that's why there needs to be oversight. And I liked what you said in the software development lifecycle. there's this concept of PRs, pull requests, and that's essentially peer review. The faster you can get that peer review happening, the higher quality you're going to have.
I think timing is a big concern in regulation, especially in the crypto market. Cryptos have been around for a while now. It's not recent.
Over 10 years.
Over
yeah.
10 years, absolutely. But just for curiosity's sake, right? Do you think implementing regulations, maybe say 8 years ago, right? Because we don't want to go all the way to the inception. As soon as the idea comes and government starts stomping down on it with regulations. Do you think there was a benefit for the government to not step in at its early stages to promote efficiencies within the industry?
You could, I don't know, as an analogy, I feel like the government was fairly wise in around 2000 with, I think, the DMCA. And there's like Section 203 that kind of gave social media networks kind of blanket protection from the content they were hosting. And then now it's been called into question. All the social media companies have kind of consolidated and they're trying to build fences. And so that may go away or something. But that was pretty intelligent, I think, of the US government to just create that blanket immunity for a while to foster new technology. Yeah. So 8 years ago, something like that crypto would probably be much more advanced right now in the US if they had done that. At this point, there's, I think securities law is just very conservative, and there just needs to be clarity, really, more than anything else.
This actually reminds me of an article I read maybe around the time Instagram started doing their paid per ad. So this is kind of more marketing focused. So there was an ad, I believe it was from a Korean company. This was malicious advertising as far as what was noticed. It was a very clever and simple way they got people to go to their site. And obviously the site was very much malicious, and there's all kinds of viruses and stuff that were installed on your computers. So the way they did it was very simple. They had a picture, some clothing or whatever it was, I forget the exact content, and they put a very thin black line, making it look like a piece of hair had fallen on the screen. And as soon as they tried to swipe that piece of hair off their screen, thinking that it was a piece of hair, it would then immediately redirect them to their website. Right? So I think and since then I've seen massive shifts in the policies associated with digital marketing. We've seen a lot of compliance around text messages now. You have to be, I forget what the compliance is, but there's some pretty strict procedures to be able to advertise or market through texting, and I'm sure the same applies to all kinds of digital media these days. And I would say that's an area where, the government really did step in, and some of the older generation that will potentially fall into these pitfalls, they're benefiting from it. And I think at this point in time, it is a good time to step in, right? Like, the digital marketing area has started to mature to a certain extent, and the regulations that are being imposed are starting to benefit everyone.
Yeah, and customers really do appreciate that, and users of these tools too. And my full-time job being an engineering manager for a text message-based e-commerce company, where they're building an AI chatbot that essentially allows you to have a personal shopper just as a text message thread. That's one of the first things that we look at, is how do you be upfront about opt-in messaging and differentiating marketing versus transactional messaging, and also understanding the responsibility that the company has with being stewards of someone's personal data, especially over transaction, and how to not make sure that older generations aren't sending threatening or messages that could be a threat or expose them to threats such as credit card information and things like that, and building safe bridges from a text message onto a web portal that's secured, because SMS by itself is inherently insecure, but a very convenient channel. And so how do we maximize some of those protocols that everyone texts their friends and it feels conversational, but then also using our platform, while it is a part of industry and we are trying to make money out of it, also using it as an opportunity to teach our users and our customers that we do have ethics, and we do want to remind them not to expose themselves to any threats or targets, and doing everything in a secure transaction. And so, it's very interesting seeing how marketing has become very much regulated over the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years, especially after we've seen the impacts on political elections and disinformation. I think there's been a huge surge on, no matter what political ideology you have, but just being very clear about where advertising lands as we're interacting with technology.
So, going back to the benefit of tech for good. Yesterday we spoke about AI, and we had some really interesting discussions with some people in the audience. And one of the questions that I had was, we love, as tech guys, software engineers, we love technology, obviously, we love AI. But there's a point where automation gets to, it's too much. People start losing jobs, right? As software engineers, as people that are building these systems, do you think that we have a responsibility to make sure that we don't put too many people out of work? Are there certain automations that don't need to happen, right?
It's a great question.
Yeah, I think there is a fine balance, right? Like, back in the day when manufacturing, like, America was all in on manufacturing, and then we started having these automated robots, hands, mechanical hands, and, tools to kind of, replace those jobs for the sake of making everything more affordable. And, there was a big concern back then. What are people going to do once they lose their jobs? And then we developed this entire industry related to software that kind of replaced a lot of those jobs. And something similar is happening now. We're automating all the coding aspects of things, and most tasks are starting to become automated. And so now the question becomes, what is the next phase for people? And and technology is actually the answer to that as well. Because right now, with the availability of online courses, I know Microsoft is spending billions and billions of dollars in educating people to get skilled, trained on the next and greatest technologies. I think, and that's what it's going to be, right? People are always going to be needed, right? If you're working on a mainframe or a database, or whatever, there's a physical component to it. There are people that are going to be needed. There is going to be quality controls, checks that need to happen, and only a person will be able to do that. I guess until AI starts becoming not AI, but actual intelligence.
Sentient?
Yes, sentient. But the idea is probably, at least my perspective is, if it does get to the point where we do have intelligence, hopefully, if we're in a Terminator situation, let's hope not, the other alternative is it's going to free up people to do a lot more. Your time is going to be given back to you. You're going to be able to buy things at a much cheaper cost, because now everything is about to get automated, which means the cost of labor is going to go significantly down, which means the goods that you're buying are going to go down. Looking at it from the time perspective, you can go on vacations now a lot more frequently. In fact, I would hesitate to say that most people will be on vacation 90% of the time. I don't know. But just, it is very speculative at this point, but we are looking for what is that next industry that people are going to get trained on, and technology is going to be the tool used to train that next generation of workforce.
Yeah, I think about this a lot, actually, and automations should be good for humanity, right? Like, it should free us from drudgery and like unpleasant work. I mean, if we don't do that, we're kind of really fumbling the ball. So I'm all for automating everything we can, and I think there's kind of two layers of things that are probably especially likely to be automated, and it's kind of really mundane, repetitive physical tasks, which much of that is already automated with factories, robotics, and then there's more white-collar tasks that are also fairly repetitive and kind of standardized, and I think LLMs will be able to automate that. But I do think, there will maybe be less work needed to be done than in the past. Although, ironically, where we are now, there's more demand for jobs at the moment, right, than there is supply in a lot of places. So maybe more new jobs will just kind of naturally evolve. You've got social media managers and influencers now. Those jobs, you try to explain that to someone 30 years ago, they won't understand what you're talking about. But at the same time, I do think we need a robust safety net of some sort, like a UBI or something ultimately, to support everybody. And I say that as a raging capitalist, actually. A safety net would free people to take more risks and not have to worry about, what happens if this fails and I run out of money. And I think that would actually release a lot more dynamic potential in our economy, personally. How we get there is a little bit complicated. I don't think it's like an overnight change, but hopefully, it does lead to everybody having more leisure time. I mean, if automation doesn't do that, then, what are we doing?
Yeah, I actually was thinking about that too, where we're oftentimes faced with, people feeling like AI or technology is going to replace their work. It's both a short-term and a long-term problem, and I think it's very easy to think of the long-term where, new jobs will get created, we can upskill everyone, but if someone is, 50 right now and about to approach, the last milestones in their career before they start thinking about retirement, they're not going to go start learning how to be a prompt engineer in 2 weeks. Like, we also need, things that can happen now for when some of these jobs do get phased out, and things like a UBI, a universal basic income, or areas where you can pinpoint where is automation impacting existing jobs, and maybe you do accelerate retirements because we've generated so much wealth. I think this is one of those times where we have a lot of history behind us where we've seen technology replace entire groups of labor forces, and it creates these deserts in big communities. And even thinking about manufacturing, going from the horse and buggy to automobiles, a lot of the towns that were around in those areas were just completely desolate. And even we're seeing the same thing with automobiles as well, where as we're moving from gas to electric, cities like Detroit, where could have definitely benefited from more subsidies, more money being put back into the community to stand it up, that had nothing to do with upskilling or transit, just saying, new jobs are going to be created. It actually takes somebody stepping up and actually going right to the communities to make sure that money is going back based on the wealth that's created.
Yeah, just to go back to, I don't think that we should be stifling any kind of innovation to prevent people from losing jobs. It's kind of a weird area, right? We'd be kind of getting into kind of a philosophical debate, right? Is that our job? Not really. Our job is to advance things forward and do that, and hopefully it all works for good, right? I think where we can help a lot of people is in teaching people about the technology, right? Just getting it out and awareness and things. Take, for example, like the trucking industry. There's going to be major disruptions coming up in that, obviously. I mean, they're going to have self-driving vehicles and all that go into those. So now what can we do? I mean, as long as they have the information for the people that are going to be disruptive, you can have them learning and training on new systems and new things that they can do. So when that point comes, that they are aware and have somewhere else to go or some other thing to do. But yeah, I don't think that we should be stifling the technology. I think we just go and then let that stuff kind of work out, but at the same time educate others on how the tech can help them.
Trucking is a good near-term example, because I think if you look at cargo ships, you could get a sense of where trucking is probably going. I think there will still be truck drivers, but their job description is probably going to change a lot. The truck will drive itself, but they're also needed still to provide security for the cargo and to do maintenance types things on mobilely. I guess one other thing I wanted to mention on kind of the flip side of this is there's a stat going around a few years ago that like 30% of people are just totally disengaged at work. They don't enjoy their work. They just don't want to do it. There's, punching in, passing time. In America in particular, I think there's going to be this cultural change that we're going to have to contend with, where the work ethic in our culture is so strong and people feel, so bad or dishonored if they don't have work in a way. Personally, I don't think it's a good solution to just have the government or something like give people work, like a job guarantee. I think that will actually stifle innovation. What we really need to do is respect people more and realize more that, lots of things we don't consider work is work, like taking care of your house, taking care of your family, like those things are important. And I hope in this century we can get to a point where people can get paid to do that and everyone recognizes that that has value to society as a whole.
I want to give an example of how automation has led to a good thing, because we're talking about how automation is taking away jobs. But let's take the healthcare industry for example. We know that in a hospital, nurses, doctors, these highly educated technical fields are severely understaffed. A lot of doctors usually work 60, 70-hour weeks, if not more. But a lot of hospitals and the medical industry in general is starting to put out AI-based consultations. This is an area where I think, a customer goes in, logs into an app, whatever it may be, whatever the platform may be, and, they do self-diagnosis, right, using AI, machine learning, and this severely reduces the burden on the hospital, because now a lot of the stuff that takes an in-person visit, takes an hour or half an hour from a doctor, where it could just be, hey, you have a cold. It happens, right? This is where I see there is a lot of good potential for automation and reducing the burden on highly stressful industries.
Mm-hmm. And enabling those professionals to handle more clients at a time.
Absolutely.
I definitely don't think doctors and lawyers are going away.
They are not.
Definitely not, but I think their job might be very different in the future. Rather than kind of figuring everything out and addressing the client, they may become a little more like an interpreter where,
Yep.
AI says, these are the 5 most likely things, and then the doctor kind of colors that in for you and helps you make an informed decision. So it's more of a communication and interpretation job than diagnostic directly.
Absolutely.
Although, I'm sure there's going to be edge cases and stuff where they have to watch out, where it's like, well, it's a 50-50 this or that, and, the AI sometimes hallucinates about this, or, the doctor will have ideally in-depth knowledge about that that'll help them kind of decide edge cases.
There is a fine line between how much do you trust the AI versus, okay, I just want to go to a doctor and have them. But there's also human error to account for as well,
Exactly.
which is also going to hopefully get reduced.
If you look at self-driving, the error rate of automated cars is much lower than humans. And it'll probably be similar for many industries, but humans will still be necessary, absolutely.
And I think the overall theme here, the reduction of jobs and all that stuff, this is a very long-term process. It's going to be a very stretched out process. It's not going to happen overnight. I think in the interim,
I think in the software engineering space, you're already seeing
we're already seeing
huge
it.
numbers where, I think it was Microsoft, they reduced their workforce by quite a significant amount because of automation and AI. I'm of the opinion that in the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be huge layoffs because of AI. And I'm a pessimist in that way. I follow Jeffrey Hinton. If anybody follows Jeffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI. I know, Nick, you don't agree with his.
Right. No, I'm not a symbolist.
But I watched him live at Collision last year, and he basically quit AI because he's gone on a mission to warn people about the dangers of AI. I think as software engineers, we tend to be overly optimistic about AI and think that, we paint these rosy pictures that AI can do no wrong and, everything's going to be awesome. We're all going to be out of work and the government's going to give us UBI and,
there's
hallelujah.
Well, to jump in, I think one of the most dangerous things that could happen with AI is if we get into if it's like 99% effective and we get into this complacent state where we just assume the AI is correct, because it's not always going to be correct. And that is probably the most dangerous outcome if we treat it like a false god, practically.
So there's a good example. So Amazon stores. I'm not sure if you've seen or been to any of them recently. So the initial concept was there's going to be an AI that's going to watch what you're putting in your cart and automatically bill you. You don't have to ever pull out your wallet. It's all tied to your Amazon account. I'm not sure how many people know what actually happened there, but the quality of that AI was so poor that they had to hire a team. I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of people in India to manually add items to their cart and bill those customers, right? That's an example of AI creating a new industry right there. But AI is not foolproof. It will take time, and a lot of time if.
Well, and I can
by
do
my
it
estimates.
with software engineering. Yeah, I would definitely take the other side of that bet. I don't actually disagree with you that there's going to be big layoffs, because it's not that software engineering will not be hugely in demand in the future. I think a lot of these big corporations are actually overstaffed, and so I would not be surprised if we see AI layoffs because of that. But I think there will be a lot more small and medium-sized corporations that find viable niches in the market that just didn't exist before. And it'll, like I was kind of saying with doctors and lawyers, AI will be a tool for software engineers so they can do more with less time, but they will still be necessary for quality control and really making sure that the product is fit for purpose. Essentially what programming is already is just telling the computer what you want it to do, and that's the hard part, is figuring out what you want to do. The AI can't do that for you.
Yeah, it does seem like there's going to be less of engineers getting phased out, but more of the role of product managers and engineers starting to get more put together, and there's a lot more overlap in those roles where, product managers can speak more technically because it doesn't require as much depth in writing lower level programming languages, and software engineers can start thinking more higher level on what does the product actually, what's the focal point of this product. That can be a much larger product versus historically engineers would have very small tickets that were part of one feature maybe. They can start thinking about projects at a time versus user stories at a time. And so I think that area is going to be a welcomed transition for both fields, because historically there's always been tension there where one thinks that they're not technical enough, one thinks that they don't have the business savvy, and that is kind of that cross-pollination there. And then to your point earlier on like highly regulated industries, I think it's been really exciting seeing that for the first time doctors and lawyers are being brought to tech companies to build the future of these tools. And I think there needs to be more of that, and there needs to be more of a spotlight on that work, and not someone who historically was a software engineer building a product for the next legal chatbot. I think instead it should be lawyers in the room with engineers and thinking about what are the actual real world use cases. And so it's in a way changing the job, but it's not in a way that they have to learn new skills for a new use case. It's more so how do you articulate those skills to AI or to whatever the next phase of technology is.
Yeah, it really opens you up to, as tech people, to get into a lot of other industries that don't have that. For example, in a lot of doctors' offices now where they're doing telehealth and stuff, we have to upgrade their networks and things like that so that they have good video equipment and stuff like that to interact with their patients. And that's just a way that saves them a lot of time, but it's also a way to save the people that need to go to these appointments. Once again, I go back to my parents, and instead of having them go to the doctor anymore, we can have those mundane visits that a lot of old people get. They can do it from the comfort of their house so that it doesn't put, extra stress on their body, and just going places and doing all those things. And as, the baby boomers or whatever age, there's going to be a great need for that. So I think there's a lot of industries that we can help
Saves
serve.
time, it saves stress, it reduces the chance of infection even.
Yep.
And I think another part that isn't talked about enough is, the doctors and lawyers use case, where it also removes so much time being spent on practice and more time back into research. Thinking about health is a big one. There's been an abysmal lack of research done on women's health. And I think that is something that when there's fewer doctors having to manage thousands of patients in an overcrowded hospital, a lot more doctors can go back to research and exploring fields that have been underserved historically and build more data sets to then improve our medicine for our entire population. And then that further decreases the amount of people in hospitals and patients that they have to have. So it kind of creates this like virtuous cycle and a flywheel where their role gets more appreciated over time as well as easier to do.
Yep.
So one of the things that I want to touch on your health story. Has anyone read about the new AlphaFold from, I think it's from Google?
I've heard of it. I don't know much about it.
But that, I think recently that was one of the positives of AI. I do support AI in certain situations, but have you read about how AlphaFold can predict the proteins and come up with new ways?
Well, and that's a really tough problem that people have been working on for decades.
Yeah.
There's the new technologies that are going to become possible are going to be amazing with stuff like that. Just the amount of experimentation that can be automated. We can figure out new drugs, new proteins, things like that. At some point we're going to be making nanomachines, and you could have inject nanomachines into your body that do some kind of surgery or something, and help improve your way of life. But those are very complex. They need to be rigorously tested, make sure that there's solid boundaries on what they can do. And I think that's I think in all these fields, a lot of what's going to be important is making sure that tech is not crossing dangerous boundaries. Like right now with robotic surgery, one of the most important aspects of that is that the robot won't let you accidentally slice an organ you're not working on. It's actually putting the boundaries on where the work is, and that's ironically what's going to make it the most useful. It's not what can it do, it's what can it purposely not do. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Did I blow your guys' minds?
I guess we can open it up to the audience if there's any
Yeah, does anyone have a question?
questions.
5 minutes. Well, yes, I think, there's so much potential overall for automation to do good. And I think we just have to move carefully and with intention, and that's how we're most likely to have the most benefits and the least downsides.
I think it was Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things he was talking about in terms of releasing AI now and not waiting until it's perfect was this exact reason. You wanted people to get their hands on it and start using it because it's inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the evolution of what we're talking about is inevitable, right? We talk about coal back in the day. One of those families that train their children on how to do coal and how to farm and how to do certain things. And technology and advancements, people have to start training and retooling to do something different. I think at the end of the day, AI, these are fantastic comments. At the end of the day, AI is initially going to start as a great, and the individuals that, in my opinion, that are going to end up being successful are the ones that embrace the fact that it can do, as Nicholas,
Yes.
as Nicholas said,
Mhm.
being able to embrace it so it can be a helpmate more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So my clients that are doctors and nurses, what they want to do is they want AI to help inform the patient, to educate them on what's happening to them, and not having them go Google search something, WebMD something, or even go and use AI in a general sense to start panic, and flood the hospitals, and flood the clinics, and flood these things. But instead, create some type of relationship where they can have access to this information, the doctors and nurses can have access to this information, and now they can have a healthy conversation about what's happening, what's going on. Automotively, even when you talk about the autonomous vehicles, the purpose of it is not to replace the truck driver, but to allow you in your supply chain to move this product from here to there. Right now, regulations say that these drivers, and this is automated, the drivers have to stop every 10 hours
Mm-hmm.
and take a rest for 7 hours before they can get back on the road. Well, that means that this product is going to get from here to here in 2 days. When you start doing autonomous, this person can car is driving, and then wake up and they assist each other, and they're communicating while they're
Right,
driving.
exactly.
So starting that supply chain, now you're getting stuff across the country a lot faster. And what is it that consumers are saying is, I want my audio equipment here in 3 hours or 3 minutes, or if you can start doing some type of you know what I mean? I want it that much sooner. This is just going to advocate having that. So I think that when we look at AI and the use of AI at the end of the day, it's a fantastic and absolutely, the term wabi-sabi, the Japanese term that means the beauty in imperfections is imperfect right now, which is why all of you look amazing like experts right now, because you can conceptualize and understand some of this. But our responsibilities around the AI space is how do we help others become educated, and how do we help others to reduce the fears that they may have, and then help with some of the cybersecurity, help put some guardrails around what it can do as it grows, like our children do. So fantastic job. I just wanted to insert that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to kind of echo some of that, I think for our children and stuff, what, you guys were talking yesterday about what we need to teach them. I think communication is going to be absolutely important in the future, no matter what field you're in. And I mean, to your point about plumbing yesterday, I think vocational jobs, many of them will be hard to automate and will last a long time, electricians, plumbers, things like that. I do believe that.
I think trade jobs are going to be highly coveted in the future.
He did stand in to be our moderator, so we had to throw you a bone.
Yeah, I love plumbing. The dexterity of our human hands. I think as the great Jeffrey Hinton said, that's the future, folks.
Well, but so
Plumbing.
one last point overall in that, I mean, AI is just another tool. It's a tale as old as humanity, really. We have a tool, it augments our capabilities. That's the best frame to look at it in.
Absolutely.
And plumbing.
Real quick point on as it being a tool. Like, my wife has ADD, right? And so she's got a hard time getting things started or organizing her thoughts. And so she uses ChatGPT a lot to make an outline or something for her, and it really gets her going faster on doing that, and it creates that thing where she can stay focused and do multiple things, especially when she's at work and doing those things. So it's just one of those things. It's a tool that can be used for good.
Thank you, experts, for a session filled with ideas and unique approaches. I especially want to thank Mr. Moodley for jumping in. This is exactly what we talk about when we say it takes a village and you guys having each other's back. I just want to let you know that Mr. Seyfried was unable to make it to the conference. He unfortunately abstained a leg injury, so we want to send you well wishes and a speedy recovery from here at TechNet Conferences. And your team had your back, so.